Hey everybody, this is Miss Corey. Today we're going to talk about the basics of Islam and what it has to do with India. So, learning goal. Students can describe the rise and significance of Islam in Southwest Asia and its expansion and institutionalization of other regions. Students can analyze the impact of Indian Ocean trade on the cultures of southern and southeastern Asia. And I totally repeated the last bullet point because I forgot I wrote it in the first place. Just FYI, I rarely proof check my slideshows. Anyway, okay, so your job today is questions I will ask you will be in blue text. Important concepts are going to be in red text. Of course, if you have questions, please email me or come to office hours because there's a lot of information I am leaving out. All right, so wait, Miss Corey, I got a question. Why are we learning about Islam now? The other in-person classes aren't going to learn it until next semester. Yeah, I hear ya, I know. But it started in the 600s, and next semester we're going to start off with like the 1200s. And I'm like, well, that's like a 600-year gap. I think it'd be kind of useful if we learn about it now. And also, Islam has a lot to do with the history of India, which we are going to figure out at the end of the slideshow. Another cool thing is that it's a really rapid growing religion in the past and today. The last I checked, I don't think it was the most popular religion in the world, but it's pretty darn close. There's also Middle Age and modern influence in North and East Africa, Middle East, Spain, Northwest India, and today across the globe. And it's also important because next semester we're going to start off with the Crusades. Yeah, which we'll have to talk about Islam then. So I'm like, well, why not learn it now? Most of you are in my class anyway next semester. I've got a few new people coming in next semester, so we'll remind them. I'll remind them of what this is, but you guys are going to be on track. How exciting. Okay, just going to move on. All right, just like with Unit 4, remember when we talked about Christianity and the Roman Empire? I'm going to teach I will stick with teachings of how Islam came about, basic beliefs, and historical facts. I am not here to influence you or tell you what is right and wrong. That is not my job. My job is to be a history teacher, not anything of that sort. What you choose to believe in is your choice. I'm just going to give you the history of it and some of the basic beliefs, but that's about it. All right, so do you remember this cool graph I showed you back in Unit 4? You might have. You might not have. I don't know. Good question. I don't remember much, so probably right there with you. All right, so origins of Christianity. We have Judaism, okay? So remember we talked about how Judaism and Christianity, they're both Abrahamic religions, okay? They believe in the same God. Christianity kind of stemmed from Judaism. So Judaism started about 2000 BCE, monotheistic, important messenger was like Abraham. Holy text is the Hebrew Bible, which includes the Torah. Right? And so there's a lot of overlapping between like Judaism and Christianity text. Christianity started about 33 CE, about Jesus' death. The main messenger, it was the Messiah Jesus, who was Jewish, believes in all the prophets who spread the word of God, including Abraham, just like the Jews do. And the holy text is the Bible, which includes some of the same text as Judaism. Okay, right? Remember that? Sweet. You ready to add on? We got one more religion to add on. Can you guess what it is? I'm sure you can by the title of this slideshow. All right. So yes, that's right, Islam. Okay, like seriously. I remember when I was in the 11th grade, and I can like tell you exactly where I was sitting in the classroom when my history teacher was like, "Oh yeah, like Jews, Christians, and Muslims, they all have the same God. Like they all believe in the same God." And I was like, "What? I went 16 years of my life and I didn't even know this?" Like it just my mind was like blown. It was really like, "Oh my gosh, I never knew that." So now I want to tell you that too. Yes, Jews, Christians, and Muslims all have the same God. They are all Abrahamic religions. So, Islam, I'll get more into a dive deep later on, but it started in 610 CE. That's when Muhammad, who is the prophet, had a revelation from God. We'll talk about it more. Main prophet's Muhammad. He's believed to be the final prophet sent by God. And they also believe in other prophets, including Abraham, right? King David, Solomon, Moses, Noah, Jesus. Yeah, that's right. You're like, what? Muslims believe in Jesus? Yeah, they do. Which is really cool. And there's a little bit of a difference between what the Muslims and the Christians believe about Jesus. So the Muslims do believe that Jesus was a prophet, he was a Messiah, he was a savior. Um, they believe that he performed miracles, he was born from Mary. Um, yeah, and then he would come at the end of time to like have salvate people. But one of the big differences that they don't believe equally is that Muslims don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. That's like the big difference between them. But yeah, hmm pretty interesting. So holy texts include the Quran, and a lot of the Quran is going to contain stories that are also found in the Old and the New Testaments. Of what the Christians call the Bible. So, yeah, there's a lot of overlap between all three of these religions. They are all extremely interconnected. So, let's learn a little bit more, shall we? All right, so Islam, that's the name of their religion. Muslim is a person who is in the Islamic religion. And an Arab, someone who is typically from one of these regions that I put in color here. So when you say Arab, it doesn't necessarily mean that person's also a Muslim. There can be Christian Arabs or non-religious Arabs. It's just simply referring to the people that live in this color region right here. And Islam all started with a man named Muhammad. So Muhammad, he was born in Mecca, which is a city in southern Saudi Arabia, in 570 CE. He was raised by his uncle. He married a woman named Khadijah. Kind of the cool thing about Khadijah is she actually had her own caravan company of transporting goods right across the desert. He also helped with her business. He oversaw the caravans. So he knew how to travel well. They had one son who unfortunately died when he was young, and they've had many daughters. At the end, he would actually end up marrying a total of 12 wives. Originally, he was not any part of the Abrahamic religion. He actually practiced the local Arab religion, which involved believing in unseen spirits and demons. And some of Muhammad's relatives were originally Christians. So Muhammad wasn't Christian or Jewish to start off with at all. But he didn't know of the religions. How much? That's a good question. But he did know that these religions did exist. Okay, so in 610, Muhammad is 40 years old. And Muhammad was meditating in the mountains around Mecca. And that's when God's angel Gabriel told Muhammad he needed to spread the word of God. You're like, Gabriel. Huh. I've heard of that angel's name before. Yeah, it's the same angel that told Mary that she was pregnant with Jesus, according to religious texts. Yep, same angel. To Muslims, this is called the Night of Power and Excellence. All right, so during or after Gabriel came to Muhammad, Muhammad was kind of like shocked. He didn't tell anyone but family and friends about Gabriel, talking to him for about 3 years. In 613, he started having revelations and started spreading the word of God. And some of the basic beliefs of Islam includes that souls would be judged by God at the end of time. God created the universe. There's only one God. In Arabic, it translates to Allah, but again, it is the same God as the Jews and the Christians. So it's a monotheistic religion. And a belief in prophets. Muhammad would be the final prophet according to the text or the religious text. And also a belief in angels. Like here's a portrait of the 1500s angel. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay. So, at first, Muhammad, he didn't have very many followers. And he kind of just stuck to preaching in his little hometown of Mecca. So Mecca authorities did not like him preaching. Okay, so the authorities were practicing the local polytheistic religion, and they're like, "Yo, Muhammad, let's not let's not preach this stuff here." Um, that did not stop Muhammad. Let's make that clear. So Muhammad started to get followers, mostly from the Jewish and the Christian faith. There are three reasons why Muhammad teachings became really popular with the Jews and Christians in that area. The first thing is that it wasn't written. Okay. So Muhammad like spoke about the prophets or like his teachings and stuff like that. Um, we're in a time period where the literacy rates are really, really low. So people can't just like pick up a Torah, pick up a Bible and start reading it. Okay. Because they probably didn't know how to read. Not all of them, some of them did, but some of them didn't. So Muhammad was directly teaching them from his mouth, like his words. And people really liked that. It's also a lot of the teachings are the same or similar to Judaism and Christianity. So they're already kind of familiar with the basic ideas. And it came from right from Prophet Muhammad, and it's not passed down from generation to generation. Like they're seeing the what they believe to be the prophet live. Okay. All right. So Muhammad, he was eventually kicked out of Mecca by the authorities. He and his followers went to Medina in 622. So here is Mecca, it's down here. Medina is straight north, it's about 280 miles. As they traveled, they spread the Islamic word. In Muhammad's travels from Mecca to Medina is called the Hijra, and it marks year number 1 in the Islamic calendar. Okay, there is a lot of history behind the beginnings of Islam. I am no expert in Islam by any means. So I'm just kind of condense this down a little bit. So, long story short of how Muslims became a conquering religion in the Middle East. So Muhammad and Muslims were mad at Mecca for kicking them out. Muslims battled Mecca in a series of battles. Muslims eventually took over Mecca and Medina, and they started their own government. And after Muhammad dies, they go off and end up conquering even more land. So much land so that I have down here, I know it's a little bit small, but this is in about 850. This is called the Abbasid Caliphate, or kind of like it's caliphate's kind of like a kingdom, and you can see that it covers a very large landmass. I mean, look at it, it goes all the way up to northern Africa, covers all of the Middle East, and going over here into Eastern Asia. All right, so Muhammad dies in about 632 due to illness or fever. And within 24 hours, a new leader of Islam is chosen. And that guy's name is Abu Bakr, and he is one of Muhammad's closest friends. Abu Bakr gained the title Khalifa or successor. So in English, we call it a caliph. What a caliph does is a continuation of Muhammad's teachings, and he also helped establish the writings of the holy text Quran. Okay, so one of the big things you need to know about Islam is the 5 pillars. So, number 1, there is only one God, and Muhammad is his messenger. 2, they pray 5 times a day. 3, fasting during Ramadan. 4, paying alms, which means giving food and money to the poor. And 5, making a pilgrimage once in their lifetime to Mecca. And a pilgrimage is kind of like a religious journey. Okay, so today too, Muslims are supposed to pray 5 times a day towards the city of Mecca. So remember, Mecca is Muhammad's home city. That is like the holy city in Islam. Okay. And it's also where Muhammad had the message given to him by the angel Gabriel. So there's this thing, it's called a Qibla. It is a compass that always points in the direction of Mecca. So when a Muslim has to pray, they can either have a physical compass that will actually like point in the direction of Mecca, or in modern day technology, there's apps for that. So I found this really interesting, but Google actually has like a little compass feature that will tell wherever like you are on your phone, like it'll tell you which direction you need to pray, and also gives you a timetable of when and those 5 times a day you need to pray. So here's the timetable for this past week. Sorry, I made the slideshow a little while ago. All right. So, the Quran. The Quran is their holy text. It is written by people who heard Muhammad's teachings. Okay. Muhammad actually did not write anything in the Quran. Why? Because Muhammad was actually illiterate. It includes all the teachings that Muhammad heard from the angel Gabriel during his multiple revelations, so learnings and his teachings that Muhammad had with Gabriel from 610 to 632. A lot of the stories are incredibly similar to the Torah and the Bible, but some details might be slightly different. I didn't pull up any examples for y'all, but if you want some, I'm sure I can find some. And the Quran includes Muhammad's night journey, and this was when he was divinely transported to Mecca, to Jerusalem, and then to heaven, where he was in the presence of God. That's like one of the biggest stories in all of the Quran. Here's a picture of the Quran. Typically, especially older Qurans that were made for like rich people, um, they're really, really elaborately decorated, like crazy decorated. And you can see there's a little bit of text written right here, but the rest of it's like crazy artistic. They're pretty cool actually to look at. Oh, here's some more pictures. Okay, so you can look here, like here's some of the written text, and you can just see how this is all hand drawn, okay, with just pen and ink. Okay, here's the front cover of it. You can see it's very detailed. Yeah, I know the Minneapolis Institute of Art has a few Qurans on display that are like just as pretty as these. All right, another really interesting thing about Muhammad, and this is something I didn't learn until I was like in college, is that images of Muhammad are forbidden. So Islam's or Muslims cannot have statues or paintings or drawings of Muhammad or other prophets. And the reason for this is that they wanted to stop the risk of idolizing the art. And what idolizing is worshiping the object instead of actually worshiping the real God. All right, so a mosque. A mosque is a place of worship for Muslims. Okay, just like how Christianity is a church, Muslims have the mosque, or the Jewish synagogue. That would be like the Jewish equivalent. And prayer leaders are called imam, and they always face Mecca. Minbar, that is the platform that the imam prayer leader sits upon. I don't have a picture of it in here. And then the minaret, which is the tower that is attached next to the mosque. That's also a really important symbol. And sometimes mosques also have courtyards. And mosques can come in all shapes and sizes. And you can see here too, typically mosques also have prayer rugs, like you see these women have down here. And here's one from the 1500s up here. Oh, here we go. See those like kind of like pointy towers? Yep, those are very important. So here's one of the most famous mosques. This is the Blue Mosque in Turkey. You can see it's very elaborately like built up. And then there might be mosques that are an old house. Okay, so it's not like it has to be a certain way or shape or form. This one's somewhere in Minneapolis. I forget where. Sorry, it was a while back when I made this slideshow. Okay, so basics of Islam again. There's something called the Hajj, and the Hajj is a pilgrimage to Mecca. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, like I talked about just a few minutes ago. Every Muslim needs to go to Masjid al-Haram Mosque in Saudi Arabia. I think I spelled Saudi wrong. I don't know. Today, the Hajj, like a trip to the Hajj from Minneapolis to Mecca, is about a minimum of $8,000. So this is one of the things that Islamic people really, 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 really need to do, right? It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam, but it's really expensive. Oh yeah, here is the picture of the mosque. You might have seen this before where like there's that black box in the middle. We'll talk about that in just in a second here. Oh, here it is. Haha. All right. So when I was in high school, I always wondered what the black building in the middle of the Hajj's Mosque is. What do you think this black box that everyone is praying towards? What do you think this black box is? All right, so it's something called a Kaaba. It is to believe there's only one in the world. Is believed to be where Allah or God has his earthly home. Okay, so it's just this square building. Okay, it's not very big as you can see in the picture. Yeah, you can like you can't go inside of it, but people can go inside of it. Only high up imam or prayer leaders can go in. And this is what the Muslims really pray to 5 times a day. So yeah, they pray towards the city of Mecca, but this is actually what like they're praying to. Here's the inside picture of the Kaaba. I don't, I don't know. It's like when I was in high school, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's inside? What's inside? This is it. I mean, it's pretty, but it's just pretty much a room. But it's a very sacred room. All right, so there's two main branches of Islam. There's the Shia and the Sunnis. Shia also could be Shiites. I think it means the same thing. They split into two branches about 656, so not very long after Muhammad died. Here's just kind of like a little difference between them. So the Shia believe that only descendants of Muhammad can be caliphs or rulers of like an Islamic kingdom. And the Sunni believe that caliphs do not have to be descendants from Muhammad. So that's really the big difference between the two. All right, so who's the leader of Islam today, right? Good question. Usually the caliphate is the leader of Islam. So, a caliphate, you can kind of think of him as like a religious king. Um, and he also would control the government and religious structures. But the last caliphate ended in 1924 with the fall of the Ottoman Empire due to the siding like they sided with Germany during World War One. What happened during World War One? Well, Germany lost, so they lost too, and the Ottoman Empire fell. So today there is no one ruler of the Islamic world. It is mostly up to local rulers and different rulers of Sunni and Shiite religions. And imams are leaders because they're typically experts in Islamic law. Oh, here's the picture of the last caliphate back in 1924. Okay, Ms. Corey, just tell us, what does Islam have to do with India? Okay, I'll tell you. Ready? Let's go. All right, so as of 2011, Islam is India's second biggest religion. Oh, spelled biggest wrong. See, this is what we do. Is 117 million Indians are Muslim today. Pakistan, which is right up here, okay, to the north of India, that was once a part of India when it was under British rule from 1958 to 1858 to 1947. And India got its independence from Britain in 1947. And once India got its independence, it was like, here, Pakistan, you can have your own little country. So it could be ruled by Muslims. Okay, getting a little too ahead of myself. Let's go back to the Middle Ages real quick. That was just kind of a modern day connection. Okay, so we talked about how the Mongol Empire, it fell in the 1300s. After the Mongol Empire fell, okay, they were kind of the big controllers of the Silk Road. A new country needed to dominate that trade, okay? The Silk Road it was important for getting goods to and from China and Europe. And the Indian Ocean was important for goods from China, India, Africa, and the Mediterranean Europe. So remember on the John Green video, I think, we talked about how the Silk Road wasn't just one big road. It was like a series of roads. And there was the land road and there was also the ocean road that like went down around India. Okay. Oh, here it is. I forgot to put this in here. So here's my question. What do you think is going to be ruling a lot of the Middle East where the Silk Road, land and sea, okay, so land, sea, goes through? So who do you think is going to be ruling a lot of the Middle East where the Silk Road, land and sea goes through? Yes, it is going to be the Islamic Caliphate, right? Because they controlled a lot of that Middle East area, as well as North and East Africa. They're going to have influence in India, and they will also have influence in China. Okay. So, trade on the Indian Ocean. European kingdoms competing with each other big time over wealth. So, they wanted the best of the best items in Europe. And they also wanted a lot of foreign items, such as Chinese porcelain. They also wanted precious metals, jewels, spices, fine textiles like silk, Asian pottery. Those are all in high demand. And they also wanted to trade essential goods such as cotton, pepper, rice, wheat, barley, timber, and horses. All right, so on the trade with the Indian Ocean, there's a special kind of ship. They're called dhows. Here's a model of the ship. Why do you think these ships were important for trading? So, dhows could carry about 400 tons. That's about 800,000 pounds. Yeah, I know, right? You're like, that little ship? Yeah, it can. It's crazy. That is the second heaviest load a ship can haul in all of the world at that time. It was created in India and the Middle East coastlines. It was made of heavy hardwood, which is teak. That's the name of the wood from Southeast Asia. There's two sails. Typically, they're made from palm leaves or cotton. There's a triangle sails were easier to catch winds than like you think of like the square sails like the Europeans had. It had a rudder and not side oars for steering. So, okay, so people didn't have to like row to steer. They just had a rudder that they moved. Um, Arabs use the stars to navigate, and Indians and Asians use Chinese magnetic compasses to navigate. Huh, that's a pretty cool ship, too. That is called a junk. You're like, haha, junk. Yeah, I know, I get it because like today, like in English, we call it like junk, like trash. No, it's not trash. These are really cool ships. So they're called junks. It's the largest ship in the world for the Middle Ages. They were made of spruce and fir wood. They're made in China. Had sails made out of bamboo. It could carry 1,000 tons or 1,400 men with armor, and could have up to 12 sails. Crazy. These things were huge. All right. So, do you think items were the only thing traded on the Indian Ocean and Silk Road? No. So, were people, ideas, germs, and religions. So, religions like Islam, right? So, for example, Arab traders settled and created towns in the southern tip of India and Sri Lanka. I kind of have a modern day map of that here. And Arabs married local women and converted them to Islam. And then Islam spread through trading, but also family ties. All right, let's wrap this up, shall we? So, we talked about the beginnings of Islam, like Muhammad, Mecca, Medina, basics of Islam, like the five pillars, mosque, Hajj, and Kaaba, and trade in the Indian Ocean with the junk, which is the Chinese ship, and the dhow, which is the Indian ship. Ooh, so you're going to answer this in your study guide. Okay, summarize the history and beliefs of Islam in 3 to 4 complete sentences. Do it right now. Good job. All right. So next up is your Unit 6 summative, actually. Um, and I have a whole directions video for that on the page. I won't go through that now. If you have questions, comments, or want to learn more, feel free to email me or come to office hours. Bye.